one late-night phone call, one overlooked woman, and $1 billion deal hanging by a thread. Most people walk past the cleaning crew without even a second glance. You see the uniform, the cart with cleaning supplies, the quiet presence that keeps the floors shining, but you rarely stop to think about the person behind that mop. Tonight's story is about one of those people, a woman who thought her night would be like any other, but instead, she stumbled into a situation that would shake the walls of one of the biggest companies in the country. Her name was Darlene Whitaker, 58 years old, from Toledo, Ohio. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't loud. She wasn't one of those people who felt the need to tell you about every accomplishment in her life. Darlene was the type who carried herself quietly, with dignity, even when the world seemed to overlook her. She raised 3 kids, mostly on her own, worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs, and never complained about the long bus rides home. If anything, she carried her struggles like heavy grocery bags, firm grip, no nonsense, never asking anyone else to hold the weight for her. That night, she was on the 23rd floor of Hawthorne Global's headquarters in downtown Detroit, scrubbing trash bins and dusting surfaces in offices where people made more in a week than she did in a month. She'd been working this night shift for almost 7 years, always arriving on time, always finishing her rounds before sunrise. But there was something different in the air. The office was quiet, too quiet almost. The big glass windows gave her a view of the city lights below, twinkling like scattered diamonds across the black water of the Detroit River. The air conditioning kicked on, faint and steady, but that wasn't what caught her attention. What caught her attention was the phone. It rang. Not once, not twice, but over and over, loud in the silence. Darlene stopped what she was doing and looked at the CEO's desk. The phone's screen lit up in the dark, showing a number with a country code she didn't recognize. She frowned. Now, Darlene wasn't the kind of woman to meddle in business that wasn't hers. She'd seen too many people lose jobs over sticking their nose where it didn't belong. Besides, who would expect the cleaning lady to answer the CEO's phone? Still, the sound gnawed at her. Ring, pause, ring again. Whoever was on the other end wasn't giving up. She glanced at the clock, almost midnight. Her cart squeaked as she wheeled it closer, eyes locked on the phone. Her hand hovered over the receiver, then pulled back. She shook her head. "Girl, don't be stupid," she whispered to herself. But the ringing continued, almost daring her to pick up. It was at that exact moment, on that floor, in that high-rise office, with the city sleeping below, that Darlene Whitaker's life would take a turn she never expected. Because when she finally answered that phone, she wasn't just cleaning an office anymore. She was about to step into a conversation that would decide the fate of $1 billion deal, and she didn't even know it yet. But the story doesn't really start with the phone call. It starts with Darlene herself, who she was, how she lived, and why she was the last person anyone expected to save a company like Hawthorne Global. Darlene's life had never been easy. She was born and raised in Toledo, in a neighborhood where you learned early on how to stretch a dollar and how to make the most of what little you had. Her father worked at the Jeep plant until his back gave out. Her mother took care of other people's kids for a living. They weren't poor in spirit, but money always seemed to slip through their fingers. By the time Darlene hit her teenage years, she knew college wasn't in the cards. She worked at diners, laundromats, and grocery stores, always hustling to keep some money in her pocket. Then came kids, 3 of them, each with their own set of challenges, dreams, and needs. Their father wasn't reliable. Some weeks he was around, other weeks he disappeared with excuses that didn't add up. Darlene learned quickly not to wait on help that wasn't coming. She found work cleaning offices because it was steady, and steady meant survival. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. She could clock in, do her job, and go home without anyone breathing down her neck. Most importantly, it meant she could put food on the table. Her kids were grown now, 2 daughters in their 30s, 1 son in his 40s. They had families of their own, and while they called her, they didn't always visit as often as she wished. Sometimes, loneliness crept in on the long bus rides back to her small apartment on Monroe Street, but she always reminded herself, better lonely than helpless. At work, she kept her head down. She wasn't the type to gossip with other cleaning staff or hang around the break room. She moved like clockwork, vacuuming hallways, polishing glass doors, collecting stacks of empty coffee cups left behind by executives too busy to clean up after themselves. And yet, while she kept to herself, she noticed things. She noticed how the junior staff held their breath when Alexander Hawthorne, the billionaire CEO, walked by. She noticed the tone executives used with secretaries versus with clients. She noticed meetings that stretched long into the night, voices echoing through the floor with words like contracts, projections, deadlines. She never pretended to know everything, but she listened. And after years of listening, a lot of it stuck. That night, before the phone rang, she was just doing what she always did, emptying trash bins, straightening chairs, wiping down surfaces. She paused for a moment in the CEO's office, her reflection staring back at her from the glass window that stretched from floor to ceiling. Sometimes she wondered if anyone in this building even knew her name. To them, she was just the cleaning lady, invisible, replaceable. She sighed and pulled the bag from the bin. Her knees ached, her hands rough from bleach and scrubbing pads. She thought about the bills sitting on her kitchen counter, rent, gas, her youngest granddaughter's school fundraiser that she wanted to help with but couldn't afford this month. Darlene wasn't the type to complain out loud, but the weight was there, pressing in the quiet moments. Still, she kept moving, because that's what she always did. She moved forward, one small step at a time. But sometimes, life doesn't ask if you're ready before it tests you, and Darlene's test was already waiting on that blinking phone. Hawthorne Global wasn't just any company. To the city of Detroit, it was a symbol of wealth, technology, and progress. The headquarters stood tall in the middle of downtown, a glass and steel giant that looked like it could swallow smaller buildings whole. For most people, stepping inside was like stepping into another world, but for Darlene, it was simply her workplace. She didn't care about the polished marble floors in the lobby or the way the security guards wore suits instead of uniforms. She didn't care about the smell of expensive coffee drifting from the executive lounge. What she cared about was finishing her shift and catching the last bus back home. Still, she noticed the way the building seemed alive during the day and hollow at night. During business hours, the halls were filled with voices, deals being made, heels clicking across the floor, the sound of printers running nonstop. At night, the noise died, and the silence became so heavy that even the smallest sound felt sharp. A chair creaking, a phone vibrating on a desk, her mop bucket wheels echoing down the hallway. The CEO's floor was the strangest of all. Everything was bigger, brighter, and more expensive. The desks were sleek and spotless. The chairs looked like they belonged in an art museum, and even the trash cans were polished metal instead of plastic. Darlene sometimes joked to herself that the pens in those offices probably cost more than her weekly paycheck. She'd seen Alexander Hawthorne a handful of times. Tall, early 50s, salt and pepper hair, always in tailored suits. He wasn't loud, but people listened when he spoke. She remembered once walking into the hallway just as he passed by with two assistants. He didn't look at her, not even once. It wasn't rude exactly. It was just like she wasn't there. That was what life inside Hawthorne Global felt like most nights, Darlene doing her work, making sure everything looked perfect for people who never noticed her. But she paid attention. She'd overheard conversations about clients in Germany, investors in Switzerland, suppliers in South Korea. She learned the names of people she'd never met, people whose signatures on contracts were worth millions. It was like standing on the edge of a storm, close enough to feel its power, far enough that no one expected you to touch it. Still, every so often she wondered, what would it be like to sit at one of those desks instead of wiping it down? To make decisions instead of sweeping around the people who did? She pushed the thought away. That wasn't her life. Her life was steady paychecks, bus rides, and late dinners, eaten in silence. That night, though, she noticed something strange. Papers scattered on Hawthorne's desk, highlighted passages in a contract she didn't understand. A glass of water left half full, as though someone had been there just hours before. She moved carefully, not wanting to disturb anything, but her eyes lingered on the lines of text she couldn't quite piece together. Her cart squeaked as she rolled it out of the office and toward the hallway, but before she could reach the next door, the sound hit her again. The phone, ringing. It echoed across the room like a demand. She turned back, eyes narrowing at the glowing screen. The number was long, filled with digits and codes that meant nothing to her. But she knew one thing. This wasn't some telemarketer calling at midnight. Her chest tightened. She set down her rag and stared. But curiosity has a way of pulling you closer, and this time Darlene wasn't just cleaning. She was standing on the edge of something bigger than she could imagine. The phone didn't stop. Ring, pause, ring again. Each sound seemed louder than the last, filling the CEO's office like a warning siren. Darlene stood in the doorway, her cleaning rag still in her hand, heart thumping harder than she wanted to admit. She whispered to herself, "Don't do it, Darlene. That's not your business." She reached for her cart, ready to wheel it away, but then, ring again. Her feet stayed planted. What if it was important? What if something was wrong? Nobody else was on this floor, and the security guard downstairs wouldn't know what to do with a call like that. She'd always told herself not to meddle, but this felt different. She walked back into the office slowly, like her body moved before her brain had decided. The phone screen glowed. Numbers she didn't recognize stretched across it. She leaned closer. "France?" she muttered, squinting at the country code. Her hand hovered over the receiver. She thought about losing her job if anyone found out she'd touched it. But then she thought about something else. How desperate the caller must be to keep ringing at this hour. Her fingers curled around the receiver. She pulled it up to her ear. "Hello?" There was a sharp inhale on the other end, followed by a man's voice, tense, rushed, thick with an accent. "Finally, someone answers. Is this Hawthorne Global? This is Stefan Klein from Munich. I've been calling all evening. Where is Alexander?" Darlene froze. She almost hung up right there, but something in the man's tone stopped her. Panic. Urgency. She cleared her throat. Mr. Hawthorne isn't here. This is the night staff." Stefan groaned. "Listen, we have a serious problem. The contract, they changed the language. This deal cannot stand like this. If it's not corrected tonight, first thing in the morning I pull out. Do you understand? Billions on the line. I cannot..." Darlene's head spun. Billions? Contracts? What was she doing answering this call? She had no business here, and yet she didn't hang up. She gripped the receiver tighter. "Sir, I'm not the person you think I am. I don't handle contracts." "I don't care who you are," Stefan snapped. His voice cracked with frustration. "You work there, yes? Then you tell Hawthorne. This deal dies at sunrise unless someone explains why this language changed." Her eyes flicked to the desk, papers scattered across it, highlighted passages. She remembered cleaning around them earlier. Without meaning to, her hand drifted toward the stack. She set the phone down just enough to hold it between her shoulder and ear, then lifted the top sheet. Words blurred together, legal terms, numbers. But one sentence caught her eye, something about exclusivity rights. She didn't know the full meaning, but she remembered hearing one of the executives mention that word last week in the elevator. Something about how clients hated it, how it locked them in too tightly. She swallowed hard. "Mr. Klein, I'm not an expert, but I think I see what you're talking about. This part here about exclusivity, maybe it wasn't supposed to be changed." There was silence. Then Stefan spoke again, calmer now. Yes, exactly. The original agreement didn't have this. Someone added it. If it stays, my board refuses." Darlene shifted her weight from one foot to the other, glancing nervously at the door as if someone might burst in and catch her. "Look, I can't fix this for you, but what I can do is make sure your message gets to the right person. Don't walk away yet. Let me promise you that." Stefan exhaled loudly. "You must. You tell Hawthorne, or everything collapses. I don't want to fight. I want partnership, but not like this." Darlene nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I understand. I'll make sure he knows first thing in the morning. Just hold on until then, please." The line went quiet for a long moment. Then Stefan said softly, "All right, I wait, but no later than tomorrow." Click. The call ended. Darlene lowered the receiver slowly, her hand trembling. She stared at the phone like it had just burned her. She had no idea what she'd just gotten herself into, but she knew one thing. Whatever that conversation was, it wasn't small. And come morning, someone very powerful was going to find out she'd been the one to answer. Darlene stood frozen in the CEO's office, the phone still warm in her hand. She should have left it there. She should have walked away and gone back to her cart. But the phone rang again. She jumped. It was the same number. Her pulse raced as she snatched it up. "Hello?" "Whitaker, yes? You said your name was Whitaker?" Stefan's voice was clipped, controlled, but sharp around the edges. "Listen to me. You must take this seriously. This contract is a disaster as it is written. Do you understand what happens if I walk away? Hundreds of people in my company depend on this deal. She pressed the receiver closer to her ear. Mr. Klein, I'm just the cleaning staff. I don't know much about contracts, but I heard what you said, and I believe you. I'll make sure Mr. Hawthorne gets the message. No, Stefan barked. Message is not enough. You tell me, do they intend to cheat us? Did they change this clause on purpose? Darlene bit her lip. She glanced again at the highlighted lines on Hawthorne's desk. She couldn't know the full picture, but she remembered overhearing two executives arguing in the hallway last week. Something about pushing the exclusivity clause through, even if the client resisted. At the time, she thought nothing of it. Now it made sense. She took a breath. Mr. Klein, I don't think they're trying to cheat you, but maybe someone in the company got a little too greedy. Maybe they thought you wouldn't notice. Silence on the line, then a low growl of frustration. This is what I feared. They treat us like children, like we do not read the fine print. Darlene leaned against the desk. Look, I can't speak for them, but I can tell you this. I've been here long enough to know Mr. Hawthorne doesn't like losing good clients. He'll want to fix this. You've got to give him that chance. Her voice was steady, more steady than she felt. Stefan exhaled hard, the sound like static in her ear. Why should I trust you? You're not a lawyer. You are not an executive. You clean floors. The words stung, even though she'd heard worse in her life. Darlene straightened her back. You're right. I clean floors, but I also pay attention. And right now, I'm the only person picking up this phone. So if you walk away tonight, nobody will even know why until it's too late. If you give me until morning, at least Hawthorne can respond. You owe yourself that much, don't you? The line went quiet again. Darlene's hand trembled as she held the receiver, afraid she'd pushed too far. Then Stefan sighed, his voice softer. You speak with more sense than half the executives I deal with. Fine, I wait. But no longer than sunrise. Tell him the exclusivity clause is unacceptable. We walk if it remains. Darlene let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. I'll tell him, I promise. Do not break this promise, Whitaker, Stefan warned. I risk everything on your word. She swallowed. I understand. You'll have your answer. Click. The call ended again. Darlene set the receiver down carefully, her heart pounding in her chest. She stared at the desk, at the stack of papers, at the glowing phone screen that finally went dark. She'd just spoken to one of the most important clients Hawthorne Global had, and she'd convinced him to wait. Her knees felt weak. She sank into the CEO's leather chair, the kind of chair she'd never dared touch before. For a moment, she let herself feel the weight of what just happened. She wasn't a lawyer, she wasn't an executive, she was the cleaning lady. And yet, she'd just saved a billion-dollar deal, at least for the night. She rubbed her hands over her face. Tomorrow, when Alexander Hawthorne walked in, she'd have to explain, and she wasn't sure if he would thank her or fire her on the spot. Still, deep down, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Pride. But pride was a fragile thing, and morning was coming fast, along with the moment of truth. By the time the sun started creeping through the blinds of the 23rd floor, Darlene had finished her rounds. She felt drained, her eyes heavy, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Every time she tried to push the thought away, the conversation came back. Stefan's voice, the papers, the warning about billions on the line. She stayed longer than usual, pacing near the CEO's office. Normally, she would have been out the door before the first suits walked in, but this morning, she couldn't leave. She needed to see this through. At 7 sharp, the elevator doors opened. Alexander Hawthorne walked out, flanked by his assistant carrying a tablet and a folder. He wore his usual sharp suit, his expression unreadable, eyes locked straight ahead. Darlene's throat tightened. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to speak to him. But when he stepped into his office and froze at the sight of the phone off the hook, her body moved before her brain caught up. Mr. Hawthorne, she blurted, her voice shaky. He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing at her. Who are you? She swallowed hard. I'm Darlene. I work nights here, cleaning staff. His assistant glanced at her, confused, then back at Hawthorne. The CEO's jaw flexed slightly. Why are you still on this floor? Her palms were sweating. She gripped the rag in her hand, her voice trembling. Sir, last night, the phone kept ringing. A client from Germany, Stefan Klein. He sounded desperate, said the contract had a clause about exclusivity that wasn't supposed to be there. He was ready to walk away. I told him to wait until you came in this morning. The assistant frowned, muttering, exclusivity clause? That wasn't approved. He flipped through the folder in his arms, scanning documents quickly. Hawthorne's gaze sharpened on Darlene. You answered my phone? Her stomach sank. Yes, sir. I know I had no right. But if I hadn't, he would have pulled the deal. I couldn't just ignore it. The room went still. For a moment, Darlene thought this was it, that she was about to be fired, escorted out, her badge taken. Then Hawthorne's assistant spoke again, voice low but urgent. She's right. The exclusivity clause wasn't in the draft I reviewed. Someone must have slipped it in last minute. Hawthorne's face darkened. He turned to the window, his reflection staring back at him. Then he spun around and barked, Get Klein on the line, now. The assistant rushed to the phone, dialing. Hawthorne stood tall, but his eyes flicked to Darlene once more. And you? What exactly did you say to him? Her knees felt weak. I told him not to walk away yet. I said you'd want to fix it. I promised him he'd get answers this morning. Hawthorne studied her, silent for several seconds. Then the phone connected and Stefan's voice erupted through the speaker. Hawthorne, at last. Do you know what kind of night I had? Hawthorne raised a hand. Mr. Klein, first, let me say this. Thank you for your patience. I heard about the issue. You heard? From who? Stefan snapped. Hawthorne glanced at Darlene. From someone I should have been paying attention to a long time ago. Darlene's heart skipped. Hawthorne continued, his tone firm. The clause should never have been there. I'll have it removed immediately. The deal stands exactly as we agreed. Stefan exhaled through the line, calmer now. Good. Then we continue. But next time, Hawthorne, I expect more respect. Understood, Hawthorne replied. And you have my word. It won't happen again. The call ended. Silence filled the office once more. Hawthorne's assistant rushed out, already on the phone with legal, leaving only the CEO and Darlene. He turned to her, his eyes softer now. You saved this company a disaster, Ms. Whitaker. A disaster. Do you realize that? Her lips parted, but no words came. Hawthorne took a step closer. Most people here wouldn't have had the guts to do what you did last night. You answered when no one else would. And because of that, we still have our biggest client. Darlene's chest tightened with something she hadn't felt in years, recognition. But recognition was just the beginning, because Hawthorne's next decision would change how everyone in that building saw her. For years, Darlene had walked those halls like a shadow. People saw the mop, the cart, the uniform, but not her. That morning, standing in the center of Alexander Hawthorne's office, she felt the opposite. His eyes were locked on her, and for once, she wasn't invisible. He folded his arms, pacing slowly. Do you understand the magnitude of what you did last night? Darlene shifted nervously, gripping the rag in her hand like a shield. I just answered a phone. That's all. Hawthorne shook his head firmly. No. You calmed one of the toughest clients we've ever had. Stefan Klein doesn't wait for anyone. He doesn't forgive mistakes. You managed to hold him steady long enough for me to fix this. Do you know how rare that is? Her voice was quiet, but steady. I didn't want him to feel ignored. People don't like that. Hawthorne paused, studying her like he was seeing her for the first time. You're absolutely right. And it's ironic, isn't it? Someone we've ignored in this building just taught me a lesson I should have known long ago. Darlene blinked at him, unsure if she'd heard correctly. His assistant reappeared in the doorway, rattling off details about the legal team removing the clause, but Hawthorne held up a hand. Not now. Close the door. The assistant hesitated, then left them alone. Hawthorne leaned against his desk, his voice softer. Tell me, Miss Whitaker, how long have you been with us? 7 years, she answered quickly. 7 years, he repeated, almost to himself. 7 years, and I've never once asked your name, never once looked beyond the uniform. Darlene stayed silent, unsure if she should respond. He straightened up. That ends today. You reminded me that everyone in this building matters, not just the people with offices and titles. Everyone. Her eyes stung. She wasn't used to words like that being directed at her. I want to offer you something, Hawthorne continued. Not charity, recognition. You've proven you have instincts most of my executives don't. I'd like you to sit down with our staff this week. Share what you noticed. Sometimes the best perspective comes from the people no one bothers to listen to. Darlene's mouth went dry. Me? Sit with executives? He smiled faintly. Yes. You. For a moment, she thought about all the nights she'd spent invisible in these offices, cleaning up crumbs and coffee stains, overhearing conversations that reminded her just how far away she was from that world. And now here she was, being invited in. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Hawthorne replied simply. Her hands trembled. Yes. He extended his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm, but there was respect in it. Real respect. Not the kind people give out of pity. You've taught me something important, Ms. Whitaker, Hawthorne said. Titles don't define value. Actions do. And last night, you acted when no one else did. For the first time in a long time, Darlene felt something lift inside her. She wasn't just the cleaning lady anymore. She was Darlene Whitaker, the woman who answered the call that saved Hawthorne Global. But stories like these don't just end with handshakes. They end with lessons that stay with you long after the moment is gone. In the weeks that followed, word spread quietly through Hawthorne Global about what had happened that night. Executives whispered about the deal that nearly collapsed, about the client who almost walked away, and about the cleaning lady who answered the phone when no one else did. Darlene never bragged. She never told her kids or her neighbors. To her, she was just doing what felt right. But the difference was clear. People who had once brushed past her now stopped to greet her by name. Some even asked her opinion, curious about what she'd noticed working those late nights. Hawthorne himself made a point to acknowledge her every time he saw her. And though he didn't shower her with riches or grand titles, the respect he showed was worth more to Darlene than anything else. For once in her life, she wasn't invisible. One Friday evening, as she stood by the big glass windows waiting for her bus, she looked out at the city lights flickering across the river. She thought about that phone call, about how easy it would have been to ignore it, how easy it would have been to tell herself, that's not my job. But she hadn't. And because she acted, everything changed. Sometimes life doesn't give you warning. It doesn't hand you a neat invitation to prove your worth. It comes suddenly, in the form of a ringing phone. A moment that seems too small to matter. What you do with that moment, that's what defines you. Darlene Whitaker was proof that no one is truly invisible, no matter how the world treats them. And maybe that's the message here for all of us. Don't underestimate the people you overlook. Don't assume value is written only on business cards or paychecks. Respect is earned in action, not in titles. So next time you walk past someone cleaning a floor, bagging your groceries, or holding a job most people ignore, remember, you never know whose quiet hands might save the day when no one else can. If this story moved you, share it. Remind someone today that they matter, no matter what role they play. And never forget, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones we don't even see.